Hello and welcome to the Two Bald Brothers and a Microphone podcast. This is your host, Danny Ryan. I'm here with my other host, Tommy Ryan. How are you doing, Tommy Ryan?
I'm doing well.
Excellent.
Nice little shave there. You're looking bald
Thank
today.
you. I did shave yesterday. It was it's clean. It feels good. I love it. Connor likes it when I have clean shave. He just rubs his hand on it.
Yeah, he does.
It feels good. So I wanted to talk to you today. Maybe I know we still need to do a follow-up from the to finish up the Hit Refresh book. But
Right.
We had a great conversation yesterday, and I do think it pertains to some of the stuff we do for clients under the theme of work together better, and under the theme of creating a branded intranet or digital workplace. And that has to do with the logo and has to also the tagline. And I know your second career is looking at something you've wanted to do for a long time, which was to go down the route of, well, let me just start that off with what do you tell me about Iron Mountain Organics?
Okay. For me, it's my interest in doing a CSA long term. And
for
that's,
folks who don't know, what is the CSA?
Is Community Supported Agriculture.
Okay.
It's a way to get vegetables or produce from a local farmer. And it's usually done at a small scale. Most of the time it's in someone's yard, in their backyard, where it's a garden that you give shares, and people will contribute to getting shares. They buy their shares up front.
Okay.
And for, say, a 10-week period, they can get a set of vegetables each week. And they are paid, let's say, $30, so they're paid $300 up front, and 10 weeks they go and get their vegetables each week.
And each week they're picking from other people's vegetables, or what? How does that work?
It's from one location, and you will typically give a menu of items that you will plan to grow.
Okay.
And whatever is in season, what is ready to pick, is what you get each week. So it might be over the period of 10 weeks, you get cucumbers 3 or 4 out of those weeks, and then tomatoes towards the end of those weeks, peppers maybe somewhere in the middle. And then they'll do things like herbs, where you can have some things that you can kind of pick yourself and kind of add to your vegetables at kind of no additional cost. So you'll know what those vegetables will be. They'll give you a list of those and give you enough to be a significant amount of vegetables for 2 or 3 servings of vegetables throughout the week.
And this really goes along with the theme of the Tesla and the theme of sort of getting back to real things and getting back to taking care of Mother Earth, and really focusing in on renewable resources, focusing in on, real food. I think some of the things that you're really passionate about.
Right.
And so I think it's it definitely is something that you've had a lot of passion for, and even it's something I think over the last couple of years I've seen you, even with your move to being vegetarian, I think is a part of. I just see these things are important to you, and you're incorporating the decisions that you're making daily into your value system.
Right.
And so one of the things we were talking about yesterday is we've got and I'll put these up on the blog, but is you're going through the process right now. Alex had done a fun GoFundMe and had raised some funds for you to go get a logo for Iron Mountain Organics, and you're in the first. You're in the first review of version 1 of the logo. And so I think for some of the, I've gone through this process with Three Wheel a couple of times, and we even have a logo for the Three Wheel Cafe that we've worked up that has a little coffee cup, turns our crest into a coffee cup and those sorts of things. But I really think it's important when people think of a brand, because, part of the conversation yesterday was thinking about why are you doing this? And people are joining you in this returning back to growing your own food and returning back to, and also I want to talk to you in a little bit about the no dig piece about this. Don't let me forget that. But you're creating something that is a part of your community that people want to come and join and do. So a part of that is the pride around, like, I see this logo as being on people's t-shirts, where they're talking to other people about organic food. They're talking to other people about growing your own food, and how that's a part of this, a part of what you're trying to do. And it's a part of that being healthy. I mean, it's part of, not all these processed foods, and and getting back to, it's amazing. I mean, it's a miracle when you put a seed in the ground and out comes this plant.
It's crazy. Yeah,
it's just it's an amazing thing. So I think we were talking yesterday about sort of like why are you doing this, and what is it that you're creating here? Because that should be incorporated into the logo.
Yeah. It's interesting. It really is a confluence of many things that have come together over the years. I started gardening back when I was first married and moved to Maryland. I had like a 10 by 50 foot.
I remember that
area, and remember going out there with Alex and going and picking vegetables.
Did you create that, or was that already there when you moved?
I created that.
Okay.
Yeah, built that out and really enjoyed it then. And then when we moved down to Atlanta, moved to a house that we really loved that house, but it was heavily wooded, and it was on a slant all the way from the beginning of the yard to the end. And it really wasn't set up.
But you didn't start.
Gardening.
You let that stop you.
I tried. I cut down maybe $5,000, $6,000 worth of trees to try to open it up to get some sun. And all that did is gave more sun to more trees to grow and fill that spot. So kind of I didn't put it on pause, but it really wasn't that serious about gardening. And most recently, and we probably have brought it up in the podcast, but I've gone through cancer twice, and in that process of it reoccurring, I got pretty serious about how I eat and looked at, okay, how can I make sure I'm doing everything possible with the inputs that I put into my body to be a healthy person, to not give cancer any opportunity to come back, at least try to be a part of that not occurring. And in doing that, organic food was a known thing at that point. And so we started looking at, well, what should we buy organic? Well, and you look at the Environmental Working Group has a Dirty Dozen where they say these vegetables, if you're going to spend the money with organic, you should get these vegetables because of the types of pesticides that are used, the residuals that are typically on those vegetables. And you start digging into that, and you kind of open your mind to, there's a lot of experimentation going on, and we're a part of that to try to create produce on a larger scale, in an industrial scale. And it's amazing what nature has designed in order to make food healthy and good for you. And a lot of things that we do just to try to engineer, I'm an engineer, I appreciate that, to try to do this monocropping at a large scale, it creates a lot of challenges that chemistry comes in. I'm a chemical engineer, I understand that too, that looking at ways to predict and control getting food year after year at a large scale. And what's been very interesting to me is doing this at a smaller scale and doing it in a way that tries to participate with nature versus try to control nature and try to force it down a certain path. Learn about nature's way of doing things and participate in that. And organics is a way to look at it in that way, to say, let's not try to artificially put certain things in to make this produce grow. Let's think about, how does produce grow? Well, it gets nutrients from the soil. Well, how does soil get nutrients? Well, there's decomposition that takes place. And in that whole process allows for those nutrients to become available. And there's a whole network within the soil, a soil food web that participates in exchanging information and minerals and nutrients that we can easily disturb and get in the way. And the no dig kind of gets into that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I mean, one of the logos that we were looking at had a trowel, I think, in it, and you're like, well, that's not going to work because we're a no dig. Tell me more about no dig.
Yeah, so as I was getting more into gardening and trying to get YouTube videos on how to for certain things as I was trying to grow things, I came across a guy in the UK, Charles Dowding, and he has been a very long-term farmer gardener, and he does no-dig trials where he will show aerating the soil with a tiller or double digging with a fork, and then just doing no dig, which is just putting compost on top of the soil. And the reason he has done that is because looking at nature has, trees have leaves in the forest, they drop their leaves, they drop limbs, those things decompose. Part of that process is, earthworms and other things come up from the soil to come up to eat that and bring it back down. So they're naturally tilling and creating channels within the soil. That there is a system there that you don't have to aerate if you think about what are the inputs that the soil needs. So a big part of no dig is creating compost and using that compost and putting like a 2-inch layer on top at least once a year. And that keeps you from having to buy fertilizers. It buffers the soil for a pH, so you can have a wider variety of vegetables based on pH versus trying to control pH in different zones in your garden. And it just naturally does some good things. That allows you to clean up the waste in the yard where you have a tree that falls down, chip it, put it in the compost pile, leaves that fall on the ground, grass clippings, food waste from the garden. There's a nice natural way to be able to have almost a closed loop system that allows these vegetables to thrive year after year. And what people find is when they do a method of no dig and organics is the second year, the third year, the fourth year, it gets better and better because of that system is getting stronger and stronger. And when you till it, you end up kind of resetting some of that food network. There's called mycorrhizomes that are in the soil that basically are carrying water and nutrients to the roots in your plants. And if you till up that soil, then you're bringing that to the surface and killing it, and then it has to grow over again. Yes, you've aerated the soil, which is good for the roots to kind of get around in the soil, but that system that's feeding your roots has been destroyed. So it's fun to get into that because I'm an engineer, so I like getting into the science side of it. And as a part of that, you always have a tagline, or you don't always have a tagline. Sometimes you have a tagline with a company. For us, it's been choose to succeed. We've also had work together better to get more into the business of what we're doing. But as an organization and people, we think of choose to succeed. And for us, it was know thy food. And know that food comes from, know where your food's coming from. It's easy to disconnect yourself and just eat things that you have no idea what it is or where it came from or what's in it. What are all the chemicals that are in it? And for me, to try to do the best in terms of inputs is trying to say, how much of that can I grow myself and put up in the freezer or can? And I know the food that I'm eating. I'm more confident enough what I'm putting into my body is good for me versus just blindly trusting whatever company's going to do in terms of putting food out there. They're doing it for economic reasons. They're also trying to feed the world in that sense. But there's more pressure towards making sure you can find faster, cheaper ways to create that food, that the balance of making sure that's healthy. I don't think if you go through a grocery store and kind of look at the shelves that you see that much of an emphasis on being healthy. You see that with organics. You see that with some food companies that try to emphasize the health side. But the majority of it is not for a bad reason. Flavor, how long it sits on the shelf. Those are all just, the length on the shelf is good so you don't waste things, and so money is not lost in that process of bringing food to the market. But all those preservatives are not necessarily things that you want to eat, but it's just the nature of the system. So that's what's got me into that, and the whole, as we were talking the other day, the whole thing about coming up with a logo, it's amazing. You think about the fonts, you think about the colors, you think about how it's structured, and as you were saying, you're trying to give an emotional connection that when you see that logo, you want to be a part of it. You want to join that revolution of knowing thy food and what Iron Mountain Organic stands for. And the same with us. We look at free will, as the people, process, technology, our free will, and bringing that together in free will, and coming up with a crest that has the T and the W in there and the people in there. It's all things that emotionally you get connected to, and you want to be a part of. Yep. And we were saying intranets are like that. We're working with a large company here in Atlanta, and they want to do the connected revolution. And they're producing a video where they've got people that are sitting in an elevator and playing some music and getting excited about what they're doing at work. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to bring an element of joy, excitement, and something you want to be a part of, something that gets you up in the morning. And that's the fun part about doing this logo for Iron Mountain Organics, is looking at what does that represent? What are people going to be kind of clued into when they see that?
Listening to you talk about this, the last bit of this that I think is incorporated into Know Thy Food, which I've been starting to do recently, is mindfulness around eating. So I've been doing some of the headspace.
I'm doing that same one right now.
So what that does is it's sort of it brings you. I could even see you were saying like people can come and pick up recipes and pick up the cucumbers. You could also put a little meditation in there about like when you're slowing down and eating that food, and how can you do a meditation to slow down and actually enjoy the experience.
Right. Yeah, and that's a challenge that we both have. We're known for eating food quickly, is stopping to, kind of be a part of that and be mindful to what you're doing and really enjoy it. I mean, we take a lot of the joy out of eating sometimes when we look at it as just, I'm hungry, I've got to eat before I go do the next thing.
Well, I mean, when I was over at when we were over there the other week with the family, and I just had the experience of eating a raw green bean. And it had flashbacks to my childhood-wise. I don't even know if you remember, but the side of the house, I had my little garden over there.
Right, yeah.
And I had made...
You did gardening before I did?
Yes,
gardening.
I did before school.
You always are the catalyst for things that I do.
You actually finish it, though. I start things, you finish them. But the world needs us both. That's the beauty
right.
of the world. Just eating eating that green bean is just like flashbacks of childhood, and just slowing down to enjoy that. And then I like the whole experience of having those Thai peppers and like that. It's almost like you have the pain of eating it at first, and then your body kicks in and like
the endorphins.
The endorphins kick in, and you get that feeling, and it's like, oh, that's so great. But I think
it's living, right? All those experiences, and to get that, and you can get that from processed food. I'm not saying processed food, you can do that, but to actually get to the origin of that, to get to, I know where that was a seed that came up here. I knew what went in the soil to get to that, and I ate that, and nature produced an amazing thing. And as I've got into eating vegetarian food, is that I find that there's a lot of flavor, and that there tends to be less flavor when I see food that is not vegetarian. That there's just so much out there. Nature's created such a variety, and it's just knowing that it's out there. It's exploring and saying, okay, I want more than rice and beans. What does that look like? And that's been a fun process for us. Lynn and I have done Purple Carrot, which is one of those food services like Blue Apron, and wow. Yeah. Austin cooked one of those the other day and had a friend over, and they cooked it together. And it gives, an easy way to make something that tastes really good. And the guy said, I think I'm vegetarian now.
You have a converter.
And he works at Chick-fil-A.
Good gracious. So he's going to have to find a new career. No, he can work.
Yeah, he can.
Amy had a good friend, Lisa, who her father was a distributor for, what's the big meat company?
Tyson?
No. When you go and what am I blank? What's the Boar's Head?
Okay, Boar's Head. Yeah,
it's a big Boar's Head distributor, and so she's growing up, and of course, Dad's thinking she's going to take over the distribution, and she worked there for a while, but she was a vegetarian. The best laid plans of mice and men. So this is part of the. I know we've got a hard stop here in a couple minutes, but the reason why I have these conversations is this is part of the creative process. It's you have to, because once out of these conversations, out of these like why are we doing this, should be, I think, to know thy food. Let's locked on. That's great. I think that's real. That's what you're trying. That's the essence of what you're trying to do here. And so I think you run with that. The first couple of things that when we talk about this that come up is like, first you're gonna have questions about what is Iron Mountain. And so that's the area that you're in, which I think that's good because what you're saying is where the food comes from is important. Yeah. And I also like this idea. I could see you doing things like where you were helping other people starting their own CSA, and you were sharing what you were doing, like that crazy spreadsheet you made. Yeah. you don't need to say you're an engineer. You just need to share that spreadsheet. There's a, Tommy went through a very intricate detail on what he was planning out and what he had done there. But what I like about Iron Mountain is you're saying that where you're planting this matters. So like you understand the area that you're from, and then the organic pieces again, the back to let's do this naturally. Let's get back to healthy, real, whole food. So I think the name is great. It just jumps out. I think when I looked at this right away, I'm used to people typing IMHO in my humble opinion, and the IMO sort of jumped out, was like in my opinion. So it's just, there was something about that where I was thinking, that and we can throw that idea away. But I thought there might be a way I like the idea of this coming in multiple forms. One is, I could see it definitely a one that has that goes well on like a front of a t-shirt, and then like a more smaller like crest thing that you're creating, and it also would be a brand. I can see you going out and like I've got stamps up there of the Three Wheel logo and crest. I could see you creating an actual brand that you go around and heat up and brand things with the IMO, and really taking that and using it around the garden and for different, putting it onto bags and things like that. And so I think that's extremely strong. Again, when looking at this, the name is Iron, gives the sort of like, it reminds me of like the Iron Age, or the return, like it's a
return to nature.
Past.
Yeah, right.
It's a time of it's a time of, the Iron Age was using something that was in nature to do something more, and it also is it sort of reminds you of the past, or reminds you of strength. Mountain, when you talk about a mountain, you do a mountain to get away from. You get away from the bubble. You get away from things. You're doing something different. You're trying to get, and one way a lot of people go up to the top of a mountain to
get an experience,
return to themselves, to return to God, to a different type of experience. So mountain is, I think this is just, you got a great name. I love the name. And I'll put this up on the blog post, the different options that are out there. I think you and I both came to, I think 2A was what we were leaning towards for the the full logo, and then I think creating something with an IMO is probably as a crested brand would be something that, as far as a good direction to go into. Love the colors of this, very organic colors. The caps, I think that what you're using, they're strong, but they're as far as the font that's used for Iron Mountains, it just seems like it's a strong font. The rolling mountains, again, you're not on a mountain. Iron Mountain is not a place,
but it's very hilly.
But it's very hilly, and it is the location you are. It is where you are. You're off of Iron Mountain Road. It is so I think that's great, and I think that having the mountain, as far as like, this is a place that you're going to, because I imagine people on their Saturdays wanting to go to Iron Mountain to go do this thing.
Yeah, it's a
where
destination.
They're returning back to growing their own food, understanding and appreciating their own food. So I think this is great. I think some of the things I think we talked about yesterday was maybe maybe doing something with the M in mountain, since it looks like it's a mountain. So sometimes like I opted for 3-wheel. I kept with we have Neotech is what we used for the font, but for something like this where it's going to be on this, and where you wouldn't be using a font for this on like presentations and things like that, you could see about potentially making some small modifications to the M, where it made it yours, where it made it make, again, the mountains aren't big, so maybe you did something where it looked more like a rolling hills, and just did something, and then when you created that crest or the brand itself, that the M is just a little different. There's something different. The I you could stick with, the O you could stick with, but the mountains has something a little different. And then
from a symmetry standpoint, you've got the I and the O, they're the same font, and you just change the one in the middle. Draws your attention to the middle. Yeah, I like that.
And I could see you going with the crest being a round crest, something like this, but that could see it being something that's round with I and you got the 3 in there.
Yeah, that's right.
The balance of the 3 of those. So it's funny because you have like iron, which is more of a hard, and then the organics, which seems a little soft, and the mountain. It's really it's nice. I like.
I wonder if you could take that one that's the organic label, play off and put IMO in there, where the I and the M and the O are partially in the green, actually in the ground, and then some of it is above the ground. And so it gives that association to organic and association to being planted in the ground, and simple where it could be a brand.
So what I would recommend is, as a first pass, is a great job.
Craig did an awesome job.
Really strong job. And I would say almost from here, the direction I would go is say, let's run with 2A. Let's talk about doing maybe a custom font for the M, and then incorporating that custom font of an M into a crest that you could use for creating a brand.
I think it's some great feedback, because I had folks look at this, and younger folks like the last one. And then older people liked the first one. But I did get some comments on the first one being a little bit cartoonish potentially, or a little bit busier. But a lot of people were drawn to it because of the font. They said it had a more uniqueness to it, and the other ones were a little bit more plain. Like 2A and 2B were kind of looked like just plain fonts, and didn't have any character to it. So I think if you change that M, then you're bringing some character to it.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, when you see this M right here, incorporating more of like that type of M into here.
Yeah, the M from the first one. Yeah.
And it may be you could have him play around with using that font in here, and then make a small modification to the M. They're both, they're both sans serif. They're both strong. This iron just looks. It looks great.
Yeah, Linda really liked that
So
song.
I could, and then this whole, this organic where you have the instead of the formalized N, and you have a lowercase larger N,
Right.
makes it feel organic. Make it feels like it's almost like it's not what you would. It's not formal. It's not. This is like back to like. You didn't have you're
The
back
natural
to
chaos.
natural way of doing things. And a kid will, like a small child would, might do an uppercase A and a lowercase N next to it. And it's just sort of like back to, organic, the original way we did this, or before we got this really complicated.
Before we were put in straight lines. And
So good. I'd be interested to see how this, and you can take or leave my feedback.
No, some good feedback.
Yours, and just run with it. I think you're going in a great direction with this. And with that, we're 5 minutes late for our meeting, so we'll wrap it up. Thanks for doing this. And then we'll put links to. We're excited. I'd love to do some follow-ups on Iron Mountain Organics, and
maybe we can talk about the next round and kind of jump into that.
Any new Tesla tips before we jump off?
Oh, well, did I tell you I got the summons feature? Did we talk about that?
Yeah,
did we talk about that last time?
You got that update.
Okay.
You were showing me that that it would do that. That's great.
Yeah, and
for people who don't know what that is, tell them what that is.
The summons is, for one, you can pass by a parking spot and it notices there's a spot, and you can hit the button and it parks you. It backs you in and straightens you out, and that's really nice, neat feature. And then if it's in a tight spot, you can actually summon the car. You can stand outside of the parking spot and then move the car forward or backward with a button, essentially, without anybody in it. And that's kind of a neat feature.
Remote control.
I showed that to JM this morning. He got a kick out of that. Yeah. And, there was something. What I heard yesterday on a podcast is they're going to take some of the old Atari games like Space Invaders and
that's great. You can play Space
Centipede.
Invaders here.
No, I think you have to be parked to do that, but you might see me in the car as I park, spending a couple extra minutes before I jump in.
Wait, I'm on a high score here. Just a minute.
Yeah. I hope they got Galaga, because I'm a big Galaga fan.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for doing this, Tommy, and thank you for sharing your passion. I love it. I really love what you're doing here. I'm excited for you, and this is great stuff. And thank you, everybody, for listening, and have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.